Is 5 p.m. on Wednesday, March 19th, 2025, and I do hereby call this meeting of the Boca Raton Airport Authority to order, and I'm glad to be back on our home. Florence, please take the roll.
Mr. Tucker?
Here.
Mr. Noble?
Here.
Mr. Fogel? Ms. Budd?
Just joined.
Just joined.
Mr. Now?
Here.
Mr. Pollock?
Here.
Mr. Fulton?
I see that a quorum is present. Before we get going on the agenda, I wanted to share that last Friday, Ms. Bennett and I were at the State of the City address down at Meisner Park and the Amphitheater. And Mayor Scott Singer presented the Boca Raton Airport Authority with this beautiful key to the city. We hope that will unlock many doors. And this is all part of the Airport Authority's centennial sponsorship. Other recipients included FAU, Lane University, and Discover the Palm Beaches. So this, of course, will be another item for us to display in our case in the lobby. So I'm going to pass around so you guys can take a look. Yeah, that case is filling up. We might have to get another one.
It'd be a case.
Getting so popular. Item 2, approval of minutes. Looking for motion to...
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Item 3, agenda changes. Any changes to the agenda, Ms. Bennett?
Yes, sir. We would like to remove from the consent agenda item VC, the 5C.
5C, okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. And item 4, public requests. If any member of the public wishes to provide a comment on any item, the time to do so is now. Please complete a comment card identifying the item upon which you wish to be heard and provided to Florence. The public comment cards are located at the back of the room. Each member of the public wishing to comment will be provided 5 minutes to do so. The chair reserves the right to move the public comment opportunity on a specific agenda item to the point in the agenda when that item is to be considered and/or to extend the allotted time per speaker. Florence, any public requests?
There are none.
Okay, moving on. Agenda 5, consent agenda. There are 2 items on the agenda this evening. Just so you know, consent agenda items are those which the board does not need to discuss individually and which are voted on as a group. Any items may be removed from the consent agenda by a member, the executive director, or airport legal counsel for discussion before the remaining items on the consent agenda have been moved and voted. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda? Okay. And
5C, right?
Mm-hmm. What's that?
5C.
Well,
we already did that.
Yeah, we already did that.
That's been removed.
Already did that.
Okay.
Does any...
Motion to approve consent agenda with item
right.
noted that it has been removed.
Thank you, Mr. Nobles. Is there a second to his...
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, item A, license agreement with Comcast... Oh, no, we already did that. So we're in the consent. Okay, so now item 6. Federal, state, and municipal input. Ms. Bennett, any input?
There is none.
Item 7, financial report. Mitch, would you please introduce the report?
Yes, I'm here. Can you guys hear me? Because I was talking before and I don't know.
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, good. All right. Pardon me for 1 second. Okay. Let's see. I'm looking. Hold on 1 second, guys. All right. Oh, that's not it either. I apologize.
No problem.
You know what? I can't find the piece of paper I'm looking for on my computer. It's been very sluggish today. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to defer right away, if I can get this thing to open, to Robert Abbott, and just have Mr. Abbott go and give us a financial report. I apologize for not having a summary at first, fellows and gals.
No problem. Mr. Abbott, please take over.
Yes, thank you. So just one thing to note, the finance report that was sent out last week did not include legal fees in it. We didn't have those at the time. So you should have an updated finance report in front of you. That includes the legal fees and a couple other small expenses that came in between that one. Very minor, other than legal fees. So with that, I'll go over the total operating revenues, which is approximately $3.5 million. That's 2.9% above budget year to date. Total operating expenses are approximately $2.2 million, and that's down about 19.8% budget year to date due to the timing of our projects that will be starting a little later in the year. Net income before depreciation is approximately $1.3 million, and so on behalf of Airport Management and Secretary Treasurer, we respectfully present the February financial report to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Item 8, tenant reports and requests, which there are none. Item 9, executive director and staff reports. Operations and noise abatement, a report for the month of February. Lionel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, in the Romero Operation Coordinator. Before you is the operation recommending the month of February 2020. In the month of February 2025, there were 8,063 operations, which is a 1% increase from operation of February 2024. Since the presidential inauguration in January 2025, 5 VIP TFRs have been implemented over Mar-a-Lago, resulting in a total of 2,900 TFR operations that fall under TFR. And during the President Day weekend, the operation increased by 100%. So the difference was 373 more operations compared to last year's Day's weekend. In the month of February 2025, there were 1,997 operations under this VIP TFR, which is also the highest month operation on the TFR compared to February from 2017 to 2020. The visit TFR weekend so far occurred from February 14 to February 19, 2025, with a total operation of 1,073. Next, we have a map that illustrates the different flight paths during TFR and non-TFR. As you can see, to the left, there is the President's Day weekend TFR. And you can see how the flight path, they are more together, depending on the heading. The plane took off would be heading 340 or heading 070. And then you can see for President's Day weekend for last year, there was no TFR, and you can see the flight path go a little bit crazy everywhere. Same thing with arrivals. You can see that TFR day to the left, they are more together in the way of landing on runway 5 and a little bit more dispersed for the non-TFR days. Jet deliveries were up by 58% compared to February 2024, and ASGAR deliveries were down by 50% compared to February of 2024. There were 20 households that filed noise concern in February of 2025, which was from the noise hotline and the online noise reporting form. When we received this noise inquiry, we assessed specific concerns, which may involve reviewing a flight in a particular time and day, or analyzing the overall traffic over the airport. We also provide information about our noise amendments and explain the voluntary nature of our procedures, clarifying that we are legally unable to require aircraft to follow this. Most of the recent inquiry has been related to the increase of traffic in TFR. After returning the call, most of the callers did not follow up, which is why many of them were just one-time caller. concern from this on the departure end of runway 5, where primarily about the new flight path over this community that before never see this increase of flights, which resulted in a change departure, as I explained, for the TFR heading. During the month of February 2025, Customs has 280 aircraft clearings, which is an increase from the 174 clearings during February 2024. And there was one vessel clearing during the month as well. So February 2025, last month saw the most operations since the Customs facility opened in 2018. Of this operation, 1,334 passengers cleared, which is the second highest passenger count since January of 2020. These 280 aircraft arrived from 27 different countries, and there were 73 after-hour clearance in the month, of which 53 occurred on days when the facility is normally closed. This concludes the operations report for the month of February 2025.
I have a question. Is Customs keeping up with, because of the TFRs and 100+% increase, I'm looking at the numbers, for the days they're open, I know there's after-hours clearing.
Mm-hmm.
Is Customs having any issues keeping up with it?
No, not that we're aware of, no. And most of, as you see from the chart, most of the activity happens on the days that the facility is normally opened anyway,
Yeah, I know.
except for that one. So they're here and able to accommodate either earlier or later arrivals.
Good. Exciting.
Anything else for Lionel? Great, thank you, sir, good job. Item B, legislative update. Jim and Scott recently participated in Palm Beach County Days. Jim, please introduce the report.
Sure. Scott and I had the chance to go up to Tallahassee as part of Palm Beach County Days. We did meet with all the state representatives and state senators from our area, South County, and we were able to discuss airport issues with them. I have to say, they seem to be pleased with airport operations. There was one issue Scott was able to talk on about a bill that's seeking to adjust the Live Local Act that we talked about that kind of protects the ends of the runway. Scott can talk about that and other activities, but I thought we had a series of very good meetings up there. Scott?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Now, yes, as Mr. Now mentioned, the first week of session was actually my second trip up to Tallahassee. I was also up there with the Florida Airports Council a little bit earlier. But it's a rather unique session. If you're keeping score at home, you'll notice that this is actually the fourth session of the freshly elected legislature because of all the special sessions that occurred when it would normally have been committee weeks. Another unique fact about the session is it is the Senate session of 3 presidents, with former President Don Gates joining immediate past President Kathleen Passidomo and current President Ben Albritton in the chambers. So that's unique and has never happened before in the history of the Florida Senate. So that's pretty interesting. A lot of Senator Albritton's focus is going to be on a rural renaissance. He's very passionate about the rural communities, which does have some benefits for airports. The House is a little more of a mixed bag with their priorities, but both houses share a eyeball towards sort of a DOGE-like Florida version of DOGE, but more controlled by the agencies and by the legislature versus the governor or the president. Not sure how all that's going to turn out, but also accountability is big on their lists as well. As Jim mentioned, there's several bills that I have on my radar that are in the memo before you. These will probably drop off and more will be added to it throughout the session as we go through the next couple of weeks. The first one is the one that Jim referred to, House Bill 934, by Representative Vicki Lopez from the Miami area. This undoes some of the Live Local protections that were put into place last session, protecting arrivals and departures to airports and people and persons on the ground. It leaves a version of them in place for 12 of the 20 commercial service airports, but not really for any of the GA airports. It's going to be a big problem for rural communities. Locally at Boca, it doesn't really affect us too much because both the approach and departure have previously approved developments before those protections have been put into place, and so those were grandfathered in. But it is a concern for many airports. The next bill, House Bill 567 and Senate Bill 462, originally this really only caught my eye because it addressed multi-county special districts basically exempted them from the local building permit process. And so they'd have to come up with their own building permitting process, and having gone through some of those challenges with this building and other projects on the airport, I know that can be a challenge. But for some airports like Sarasota, their terminal is actually in 2 counties. So depending on if they're doing multiple gates, same project, you've got to permit through 2 different entities. So I can see how that could be an issue. But the new addition to this, which just happened in committee this morning, there was a strike all amendment introduced that added some language that would allow public use, not just publicly owned airports, access to the State Transportation Trust Fund. So this would open any airport that's open to the public up to availability to those funds, which can be a little concerning because there's a $5 billion shortfall for public airport funding as it is. And so that's just going to dilute the pot a little bit further. So we'll see how that one goes. Stormwater management systems, this one caught my eye because it basically would require us to annually certify and inspect each individual structure on the airport, and any municipality or agency would have to do the same. Obviously, some of these agencies have millions of structures that they'd have to keep track of. Now, the bill was filed for a good purpose. There was an incident in one of the Gulf Coast storms where there was one particular structure that failed along the, I believe it was the Hope River or Peace River, and basically caused the majority of the flooding in some of those urban areas. So there was this concern by the senator about that, rightfully so. But I do have a feeling there'll be a lot of changes and fixes and tweaks to this, which the senators seem very open to. The next one, tax exemptions for EV tolls. This doesn't really affect us at all, but I know this board has traditionally been interested in the concept of EV tolls. It may drive investment in the state. It's not going to take any money away from the trust fund because right now they're not being sold in the state, so it's a tax, we're exempting a tax that doesn't exist, basically. Special districts with Representative Overdorf and Senator Trunow. This largely is targeted towards soil and water conservation districts, but it does have a couple of sections that are actually beneficial to all special districts, and that's particularly comes into play with the posting requirements. We're still kind of required to post any public notices in a newspaper. I don't know who's still buying newspapers, but we are. There was a measure last session that was put in that allowed you to post the county and state website, and you wouldn't have to post in the newspaper, but this completely gets rid of that and just says posting on the agency's website is good enough for public records. Unmanned aircraft systems.
Newspapers.
Yeah.
This has a lot of language to it. It's basically prohibiting the modification of UAS drones from adding weapons or doing anything to get around geofencing and that sort of thing. The genesis of the bill was in Georgia. They made a rash of arrests for people that were using drones to get contraband into state prisons. And so this addresses that. Again, there was an interesting amendment added to that bill today, which would allow persons to use reasonable force if they felt threatened or spied on by a drone under 500 feet over their real property. It's not really allowed by the federal rules, so I'm not sure how that's going to work out, but there it is.
So basically,
We're not sure, really.
They deliver the cake via drone.
Yeah, exactly.
It's Florida.
The next special district bill, that removes a provision from last year that required us to post goals and goal tracking on our website annually. That's no longer going to be required if that bill passes. Public records had some new deadlines and reporting liabilities if it does go through. I think this came from a lot of the high-profile incidents of newspapers trying to get public records, and it was very hard to do so. Given that there's no House companion and it's being ran by a Democrat, I don't really see that moving, but it's still something interesting. Now, the transportation bill is a big one. There's a lot in it. Most of it affects commercial service airports, expanding some of the transparency aspects from last session, from large and medium hub airports down to small hub and non-hub, basically all commercial service airports. That doesn't really affect us. What does affect us is it would require every single airport in Florida to create and update and track manually all maintenance, basically this giant nebulous maintenance plan that would have to be transmitted to the state and then reviewed. That's 120 new reports that in very understaffed departments going to have to review, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense since they're not asking for any more FTEs. But there is some work being done between the Florida Airports Council and the bill sponsors and the Transportation Department to kind of make that language a little bit more palatable. There's a lot of stuff that we already do that I think meets their intent, like our facilities management plans, some of our SMS reporting. So we probably have a pretty easy time meeting this bar, even though it's still kind of what exactly is the bar. But it would be a issue for many other airports. Another provision of the bill would require airports to provide at no cost to the Department of Transportation and Emergency Management access to space on the aircraft in the event of a declaration of a state of emergency or in preparation for one in result of a natural disaster. Now, we're under a variety of special or states of emergency right now, so I'm not sure if that language is as tight as it needs to be, just directed towards hurricanes. Obviously, airports traditionally help the department during those times, but there are concerns about how long the department can maintain the property and if it's going to violate any federal grant assurances. It's also interesting that the actual term they use in the bill is air navigation facility and not airports. So that includes basically anything related to the operation of an aircraft, including radar sites, abandoned airports, that sort of stuff. So I have a feeling it might be targeted on one of those facilities that maybe turned the department away in a previous storm, and not necessarily airports. And then the last one, of course, is by Representative Wasabi from the South Beach area, and it would revoke and completely restructure aviation fuel taxes, basically eliminating the taxes that feed into the system and support the Florida Department of Transportation grant program, which again, as I mentioned, is underfunded. It's funded at about $1.6 billion over the next 5 years. Again, that's a shortfall of about $5 billion, so it doesn't really make sense to be removing a source of funding when there's so much need out there. That does not require a Senate companion, so it will probably move through the House and wind up in the House tax package. Whether or not it makes it into the final cut is yet to be seen. But those are sort of some of the ones that I'm looking at the moment. Happy to answer any questions, and we'll have more for you next month.
Cheryl?
Is that report in here? I missed it, if it is.
Yes.
It is, okay.
Yep.
Early on in your report today, you said, mentioned that accountability was a big issue by the individuals in this session. To whom, by whom, and give us some examples. Accountability
It's
by airports,
basically,
by
well, not
being
necessarily.
governed, accountability, what?
I think all levels of government are going to get some scrutiny on that. The department does care about some of the accountability for airports. You may have noticed there's been some high-profile incidents in the news where, certain modes of transportation at an airport have been down for an extended period of time that affect the traveling public, and obviously with just the increased scrutiny on aviation right now due to the rough start to the year from a safety perspective, even though none of those incidents had anything to do with the actual airports. It's other issues within the aviation system. I think that's partially driving it, and partially, some of it I think is just seeping down from the national level, some of those DOGE type, government efficiencies. Are you doing what you say you're going to be doing with the money and the funding and things like that? So you rarely hear an actual example cited when they're talking about it from the bench, but it's clear that they want to have a closer look and have a bigger lever against some of the smaller forms of government.
There are several bills that you were summarizing for us that sounded like any sense. I totally agree with your assessment. But what are we doing, not we as an airport, we as an industry, to mitigate some of that?
Well, the Florida Airports Council, which I'm actually on the board of the Florida Airports Council and on the executive committee, so we have regular state affairs calls. Some of these bills we addressed while we were up in Tallahassee, either knowing that they were coming or that they had already been introduced. But we're working very closely with the Department of Transportation and other bill sponsors to try to, explain the airport's perspective, understand what the intent of the bill is, like in the case of the maintenance plan. What they really want to know is, are you maintaining your capital assets before we give you new money to, fund expansion?
It made some sense, but there were some that seemed to make no sense at all. Like defunding things that
Well,
are
again,
already underfunded.
true. That's largely driven by the airlines who, when it comes to aviation fuel tax, largely get most of their share of it refunded. But, everyone wants to cut taxes, cut spending, but then make sure we have enough money to go around. So that's just sort of the dichotomy of politics today.
They've been chipping away at the fuel tax for a long
years,
time
yeah.
now, so now we're at a pretty low point. Pardon?
Bit of a tipping point.
Yes, exactly. So it's their ultimate goal, obviously, is to eliminate it altogether. There are states that do not have state aviation fuel taxes. Florida happens to be one of them, and that is what helps fund our robust grant program, among other things. But the airlines have been very successful, obviously, given the role that they play in the economy, in getting those taxes reduced over the years, to the point now where I think it's pretty much wanting to limit.
It's about $28 million a year into the
Not a lot.
state trust fund, so it's a drop in the bucket. But again, if you're using the system, our feeling is you should be paying into the system to maintain that system and to help that system grow. Obviously, airlines care more about their bottom line, but that's one of those philosophical things.
And the challenge for airports like us is that so many, like general aviation airports, so many of the projects that we do get funded are state funded because they are not federally eligible. So the pot of money at the federal government is also smaller, and it's competitive, and the FAA will only fund projects that they require. So if they're, for example, this building, customs, improvements to the tower, security improvements, those are things that are not federally eligible. So we rely on those state grants to do these projects.
Right. Is there any conjecture on behalf of the industry in general as to what DOGE may do in the future to impact us, either through our various
I
organizations?
think the reporting requirements we're, and interesting, it's ironic because we've talked about it obviously internally. Many of the things that we think may be coming, or for example, on the budget goals that were implemented last year and maybe repealed, we're pretty far ahead of the game as an organization because of the way we conduct ourselves anyway. So we report our goal in our budget every year, as you know, the process of the KPIs and the goals and objectives. So when we saw that last year, we said, well, for us, this is not necessarily an onerous requirement because we already do that anyway. Similarly, with some of the maintenance and the inspection and the documenting of the things that we already do, we already have a facilities management program. So a lot of the things that we think may be coming down the line, we just absorb, and then now, rather than just sort of keeping it at the local level, the requirement will be to send it up to Tallahassee for DOT review.
I think if I'm interpreting right, we are on the cutting edge already of requirements and reporting, so that's
Correct.
a major issue. I'm really thinking at a bit of a higher level, things that could perhaps be blindsided by in relation to cutting funding to FAA. I mean, things that we might not even imagine, but could be in somebody's.
For sure.
And I think that's something we've seen already with some of
No,
the.
we haven't.
Yeah.
Is anybody doing like worst case scenario? And I'm not saying that we
Well,
should
they
be
just
doing it.
appointed a new FAA administrator as airline
Nominated.
background nominated.
Mhm.
Right, right.
And so I saw that, background running in regional air carriers. He knows the air industry, airports, he should anyway, so.
And I think
how it all plays out, I don't know.
Yeah, I think there might be some good that comes out of it, particularly leveraging technology. FAA has traditionally been behind the eight ball significantly when it comes to some of these new technologies that can help make the air navigation and air traffic system more efficient. I think if we move in that direction correctly and with enough diligence and, make sure we're maintaining that level of safety, I think that would be a net benefit. But we've seen, cuts to staffing that have affected the local airports district office, which could affect some of the turnaround times on grants and reviews of projects, things like that. At the EPA level, a lot of the cuts that they are doing should make it easier for some projects to move forward because it's removing some of those NEPA evaluations and things of that nature. But it's anyone's guess because we've already seen so many of these things pushed back by judges. So it's here today, gone tomorrow, back again in a week, So it's
Just like the tariffs.
Yep.
The biggest issue from my perspective is that even though we already do these things, just as a course of doing business, whenever you put a statutory requirement on it, now there are deadlines imposed. Now there may be a change in how you do it that's imposed. So the compliance aspect is going to be a factor that we'll have to contend with, similarly to what we saw in the past with, for example, the diesel exhaust fluid, the DEF, and some others, where these are things that we kind of already do just as best practices, but now you have that onerous statutory requirement that if you don't do it exactly right, you're in potential violation of a Florida statute or federal statute. So the compliance aspect of it is something that we'll have to make sure we monitor and fully implement.
Anything else, Ms. Budd? I had just one question, Scott. So at the beginning, you mentioned the rural renaissance, and that could help those types of airports. Is that like, pardon my ignorance, but like crop dusting and things like that in these areas?
That's a completely different, that's a completely different bill, but no. Senate President Al Britton comes from a long line of citrus farmers in the Wauchula area, so he has a very close connection to rural Florida and agriculture and agribusiness. So he really wants to do a lot to help. That traditionally, rural areas have been higher in unemployment. I think at one point the Belle Glade South Bay area was close to 40% unemployment, back in 2009, 2010. So it's really making sure those farther flung communities don't get left behind, ways that we can encourage investment in those areas, retain intellectual capital. I think he said today when they had passed the bill on it, he had mentioned that not a single one of the salutatorians or valedictorians from Wauchula that had graduated since he'd lived there had stayed in Wauchula after graduation. So all that intellectual capital is going elsewhere. How do we attract, investment and capital and the quality of life to those rural areas?
Mm-hmm. And to your point, Ms. Budd, if I may, Mr. Chair, with regard to any potential impacts that could be actually positive for us with a DOGE-like effort, at the federal level, we've already had through the AAAE and ACI organizations, Airports Council International, American Association of Airport Executives, had a lot of conversation about things that might actually be beneficial if we are streamlining processes. For example, the land use review that the FAA does, can take a very long time. If we have an opportunity to impose, as a matter of regulation or amending some statute, impose deadlines on FAA of how long they have to review certain things, that might actually be beneficial to us. There may be some things with some of the Title VI requirements and DBE requirements that may streamline some of our requirements and processes that may actually be beneficial. Exactly. So if that happens at the state level, while they may impose certain things, one would expect that there may be other areas that may streamline. So we may see a similar, cost-benefit type of thing, depending on how they approach it at the state level. Mm. And Scott will be traveling with ACI and AAAE next week to get that federal perspective. But in our weekly calls with these associations, it's sort of, there's a little bit of, hope that perhaps we can utilize this DOGE process or whatever they're calling it to actually get some streamlining of some of the more cumbersome requirements that we currently have.
Very good. Anything else for Scott or Jim? Thank you, gentlemen, for representing us in Tallahassee, making the long trip. Do you drive up there, or are you flying, or?
I flew. I'm so over that drive. Unfortunately, on the flight back, I was delayed by Elon's rocket mishap for about an hour in Atlanta.
The DOGE is already having an impact.
Exactly.
Jim, do you drive up?
I drove, yes, and I ran into traffic jams all the way back home, so.
Oh, my goodness.
Been that way for 30 years on 90.
Yeah. Worst.
Well,
We'd encourage JSX to have a flight up there during that.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, right.
Very good.
We'll take the Boca Jet.
Yeah.
Airport jet.
Great, well, thank you, guys. Okay, item C, Airport Management Consulting and Advisory Services Contract. Scott, you're back up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, as the title implies, management released an RFQ, or request for qualifications for airport management, consulting, and advisory services contracting. This is sort of meant to capture all the silos of expertise that we need outside of just the classical moving dirt around, building runways, that type of engineering and consulting, which we have two separate contracts that are already in place with Garber and Kimley Horn covering that aspect. But this is some of those other things like, salary surveys, processes improvements, financing, financial evaluations, those sort of things that wouldn't typically fall under one of the other two contracts. Prior to releasing the RFQ, I know I had several conversations with multiple consultants, as well as Ms. Benedict, as we made our way throughout the industry. We also broadcasted through the Florida Airports Council. They send out a weekly procurement email blast to everyone on the council, so it gets a list of every procurement that's being advertised, or at least that's been sent to them. So that would have covered every relevant consultant. Unfortunately, when it closed, we only received one response. This hasn't been, atypical of a lot of our procurements lately. The unique thing about this is it is a little non-traditional consultant, and it's kind of hard to gauge how much work that they're going to get if they put in for it. So I think those issues may have affected the responses. But the one response we did get was responsible, and that is Recondo and Associates, who's a former consultant of the airport. I think they've done work here off and on for about the last 20 years or so. So we did negotiate a contract for 3 years with 2 one-year extensions. We compared the financial terms, the rates, to other similar type contracts that we either have in place from 2 to 3 years ago, or that we saw in previous procurements, and it's within 17% of those awards that we made 2.5, 3 years ago at this point. So I think with the current inflationary environment, that's to be expected and perfectly reasonable. So Airport Management recommends approving Resolution 03-06-25, awarding the contract for Airport Management Consulting and Advisory Services to Recondo and Associates Incorporated.
Thank you, Scott. Looking for a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, one
Yep.
question. How do we typically budget for consulting services?
We take a look at what types of projects we will be doing within the fiscal year, and so we develop kind of a budget based on that. For example, when we did the appraisals of the improvements of the buildings on the leaseholds to verify that we have sufficient insurance coverages, that was budgeted for. When we have compensation studies, we budget for that. So it depends on what we see coming down the line. For grant-funded projects, like currently we've got the Sustainability Management Plan and the Noise Exposure Map, we work on a scope that's sometimes a couple of years old, and we develop a budget and put that into our joint planning with FAA and FDOT and get us in line for grant funding.
And then, Recondo has been a constant with us for quite a few years,
Yes.
correct?
Mr. Recondo is here, Pete is here, about 15+ years, Pete. How long have? More than.
Okay. And
I've been here 11, so I know you've been here since.
What projects have they undertaken besides the master plan in recent years?
All of them until the new contracts that we're currently under with Garber and Kimley Horn. We had the full complement of services under the contract with Recondo. That included the traditional engineering services, architectural, construction management, construction administration, surveying, but also included the professional services arm of the scope. For example, the CPA oversight, the internal auditing, appraisals, a whole, the environmental studies, et cetera. were all done under the same contract. What we did, because I think the model changed for condo to break out the engineering services from the planning and the administration services, that's when and that contract was coming to an end. We went through an RFQ for the traditional engineering, design, and construction services, et cetera. And that's where we selected two firms so that when one firm is doing the engineering design, the other can do kind of the QC. But then that left that gap of the management type of service.
And I mean, I think, you know, you guys have been doing a great job for us. I guess my question comes back around to, you know, why aren't we getting other people to bid? And Scott said, well, there's uncertainty of, you know, how much work they're gonna get. But if you're not seeking these contracts, you're not gonna get any.
Right.
And what is lost by bidding on a contract for another company? I mean, you know, okay, so they get zero work. They're still getting zero work if they don't bid on this. I guess I'm a little.
Having been on both sides, I think I can help you with the
Okay.
answer. As he pointed out, the statement of work here is very undefined.
Right.
Limited,
And-
more or
and
less.
niche.
Limited
Yeah.
statement of work, and the company's gonna have to look at the effort they have to put into putting together a response. So let me tell you, these responses are expensive and take a lot of time to answer all the points. And if there's an undefined, if I may use that word, statement of work, a lot of companies will say, is it worth the 15 to 25 or 50,000 we have to put into this response when we don't know what's coming back?
And they don't
That's
know,
what I sense here.
they don't know us either, right? I mean, some of these
Well,
things, some of them would know.
So, but all the airports, all the businesses are operating under the laws and everything. So there's a basic understanding
Yeah,
of
what's-
a professional business practice.
I get that. I'm just surprised that nobody else is plunging in. And I mean, again, I'm putting my sales hat on and thinking, okay,
Yeah.
nothing ventured, nothing
No,
gained.
and I
You
agree
gotta
with
look
you.
at this as a long, I mean, Pete says 20 years. I mean, so, you know, somebody else has gotta be saying, wow, this could be a long-term.
Well, we've had
relationship.
other engineering firms,
Right.
other A&E
Right.
firms
Right.
compete against Pete in the past.
Right. By contrast, for the RFQ for the traditional engineering services, which does have a defined project list, I think we got about five or six,
Yeah.
and we shortlisted to 3 and selected 2.
Okay.
So,
I mean, I'm good with moving ahead with the motion. Bob, I just, you know, wanted to
Sure.
kind of try to understand a little bit.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just for clarity,
I think we do need
Please,
to
yeah.
hear
Got
Pete Wakanda and Associates, Senior Vice President. To clarify the question you answered, Mr. Board Member, if you look at our proposal, we have there's two things that are different in what we're bringing to you this go around comparing the past. One is, I'd say probably 75-80% of our team is comprised of completely different team member firms. We brought a couple on the accounting side and on the surveying that brought continuity, and we thought that was important because those are firms that you may use for extensive staff type services. But several of the firms are new, I would argue, are firms that could have submitted a proposal as prime and very well competed with our exposure contract. When they reached out to us, we felt that they brought something to the table that this authority could use in the special area of expertise. And it's not all about us doing all this work. It's about, at this stage, it's about you securing the service that support the needs you have. So if I can just give you a little bit of peace of mind, there's probably, I could think of at least 2 firms that are in our team that could have and probably should have thought about submitting as a prime consultant. And they reached out and we opened the door to invite them in to join us. And that I think in itself limited the competitive pool that you could have.
Okay.
So they're completely
Pardoning is-
different firms that are under your umbrella, so they are subcontracting basically.
Correct.
With their own specialties, is that what I get,
Okay.
understand?
That changes the
Yeah.
mix.
Yeah,
So,
that's-
you know,
yeah, it
part of
does.
what I think you're referring to, and we all think about this, is that, on the face of it, we have a general guideline that says every 5 years, you ought to be looking to change.
Exactly.
Just to, you know, switch it up a bit. And that works for an accounting firm, a, auditing firm, maybe some other types of consultants where the pool is much larger and the work is defined, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm so glad you did say that, because it changes the mix. You are not necessarily a firm, you are a conglomerate of firms who brought in new expertise, outside individuals who had limited ability to respond to a piece of that RFP. So I think it's a good thing, and I think it warrants us overlooking that, oh my God, 23 years.
There's very few A&E
that's very
firms.
incestuous, and we don't.
Very few A&E firms large enough to take on the projects by themselves that have all the in-house expertise. And we always teamed up. There was always a team put together.
So that's great. Thank you.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ricardo, for clarifying. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
All right, we have a motion on the table to consider Resolution 030625. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item D, update on promotional incentives and community engagement of the observation area. Mr. Abbott, please.
Yes, thank you. So believe it or not, it's been about 2 months since we officially opened the observation area. So we thought we'd put together a presentation to show the different marketing initiatives that we're undertaking, both leading up to and in the couple months since. So with that, I would like to invite up Evan Henderson, the accounting manager with Garth Solutions, and he'll go over that presentation.
All right, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and board members. It's great to be back. As Mr. Abbott mentioned, we're coming back to give you a report after 2 months of the grand opening of the observation area. I want to thank the board for their support and their vision for having this area in general to really inspire the next generation. And so I think the grand opening was a success, and we have a short video to play at the beginning to just recap the entire event.
Flight 611 Boca Raton Tower, flight over heading runway 85. Clear for takeoff.
This is the only airport observation area of its kind in all of Palm Beach County. It is our gift to you, the community, as we close out our 75th anniversary celebration.
I first got interested in aviation from my uncle, who was a B-17 and B-24 pilot in World War II. And here I am today, all these years later, still actively involved in aviation, helping to run one of the best general aviation airports in the country.
Many of the people in the community don't get a chance to see what we do here. From our observation area, the public will have an opportunity to see the types of aircraft that fly in and out of our airport on a daily basis.
I'm grateful that the airport has been such a driver of economic development in the city of Boca Raton, and congratulate them on this phenomenal new amenities that we have for everybody in the community.
You will see airplanes flying above your head, or you'll see them on TV, but you don't really get the experience of what it's like when a propeller plane takes off, or when a small jet takes off, or when a multi-engine jet takes off. The fact that these things get in the air as quick as they do, it's amazing to me.
What excites me most is really, it's the opportunity for kids to come out and inspire them to pursue careers in aviation. I remember as a kid, they had an area where you could go and watch the planes take off, and I was just in awe.
I plan on coming back every Friday, maybe after school, bring some friends, and we'll watch all the airplanes take off and land.
You can walk up here, you can see flight crews, you can see maintenance. Children can come, they can learn from the exhibits that we're going to have here. You can even hear the tower talking to the planes as they take off and land. It's a great experience. It's a way to help bring the community into our world of aviation.
Very nice.
Nicely done.
Yeah, very nice.
I also want to give a...
Is that on our website?
That is, yes, it's posted on our website.
Oh, good.
You can take a look at. Again, we've also posted it on social media with some good engagement. I want to also thank Mr. Tucker too for his direction and, you know, the availability for having the student in that video, Mr. Anthony Greco from Don Estrich, attend that event and participate. I really thought that brought a nice tying element to the whole reason on why we have observation. So beyond the grand opening event itself, we participated in a variety of promotional engagements and initiatives to make sure that we're spreading the word about the observation area. But before it was even launched, we went through and, as you know, created the observation area signage, which had QR code links to some of the same information that's on there so that people can learn more about the airport and about some of the different facets of the airport. We also created an area website, and so this is much like a parks page that you would find online, and gives you some information about where to find the airport, and where to find the observation area, what amenities are there, what you can expect. We also initiated a 360 virtual tour, so people can come and take a look around. They can get close up to the observation area if they're not able to attend, or if they're in a different state, people can learn about the area by clicking on some of the icons that are there, and it takes you through a lot of the information that you would see out there, such as which covers the signage, which covers the different amenities that are there, airport operations in general, and so you really learn a lot through this feature. We had 15 different press hits, not all of them are up here, but these are from some of the major publications that are in our area, and so covering from all three Boca Raton news publications, The Observer, the magazine, and the Tribune. We've had features on WPBF with a featured story and video, publications in Coastal Star. We made it to the radio on WJNO, featured in the AAE newsletter, and the Palm Beaches of Florida posted on the website as a park that you can visit for people that are not in the area. We also have a couple promotional items. I think it was mentioned last board meeting that Hannah and a couple of the operations people go out there, especially when they see little kids enjoying the area, to deliver some goodies and some swag. And so we have some of the binoculars that were set out that we have to give away, as well as a new introduction for the K through 12 activity packet, which is a coloring book that we will be able to give out to people to introduce them to the airport. And it goes through a lot of the information. It's very kid-friendly, teaches them about airport operations and more. Some of the social media that we did as a result, and here are some of the results that are listed. 28 different posts across all of our platforms, just under 900 total engagement, and had a very good engagement across all the posts that we posted on the airport's platform. We encourage people to use the hashtag #ObserveBCT to promote the area and to engage with us online. And so we had a little bit of a countdown to the opening. We posted and had some great engagement, as well as some additional influencers that have just on their own come to the observation area and posted about it. And so I think this particular video was probably the most highest viewing and highest engagement. I think over 100,000 views the last time I checked. But they were able to come out and spread the word about the airport and this area. You can see another one where people are just excited and they're curious about the area, you know, and they just come out and enjoy.
I like that secret focus.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Space with a green pole jutting into the sky with signage. So cool. Bonus, stroller and wheelchair friendly. Find the Boca Airport observation deck at the address in the caption.
Beautiful.
We also had a lot of engagement from our elected local officials. Mayor Scott Singer posted about us. Had a variety of people post and quite a few people that, from the public. Quite a few videos, and people have just really been enjoying the area. So some future initiatives that we would like to take this as a continuation, what we're going to be doing to promote. We have a couple of ideas, some of which have already been implemented. I saw out there today, there's already an automated people counter. So there's no more looking at the
window
cameras and calculating the number of people. We'll be able to have a report of daily and monthly visitors to the area to really hone in on that investment and see the return. We are also looking into a digital guest book or interactive kiosk of some sort so that people can come and engage, take photos, leave a little note about what they've learned or about where they're from and get some of the engagement that way at the actual observation area itself. We're looking into preparing some STEM activities for students when we host different tours or we do outreach at the schools to teach them about the science of aviation. Also interested in opening up the facility for some open house style tours and engagement through local community groups so that they will know and enjoy the area as well. And then lastly, one of the airport's priorities has been updating its wayfinding signage, which I should also mention, I don't think it was in this presentation, but we've created a Google location for you so that when you Google the Boca Raton Airport Observation Area, that pops up along with the address. We make sure that it's web friendly so people can clearly find where it is online, and this wayfinding signage would just help update some of that information as well as when you're out there on the street. So these are a couple of the initiatives that the airport and Ms. Bennett has directed us to look into, and we're just really excited to continue the positive momentum. So I believe that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Clara,
Sir.
have we had any of the weddings requested at the grand opening? Like with the signature? Two requested weddings already?
No, the grandest celebration was a 3-year-old was brought out here for her 3rd birthday. Cute. That last week before.
Yeah, I can say, so my office, new office is at the research park, so I make my daily walk usually around 10:30 to 11, and there hasn't been one day where there hasn't been at least 2 or 3 people.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing. And so I think the most spectacular day was probably a week ago. So I get up there, and there's 2 guys with big cameras on ladders taking photos. They're like aviation buffs. One's from Tokyo.
Wow.
And then right behind them are 3 moms with 3 little kids on their way to a birthday party. And, they stop by. So then I'm asking, every time I'm up there, I'm asking, well, how did you hear about this? Oh, well, social media or somebody told me about it, and it's free, and it's easy to get to, and it's fun, and it's different. I think Garth and Evan just killed it in terms of creating buzz for this thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's something that you just wouldn't think about that would turn into something very popular and big. Yeah, it's really nice out right now, and we'll see what it's like out there in August and September. But it's really amazing to me to see that, and how something can just literally take off. So I see the restroom sign is up now, no public restrooms. So has that become an issue, or?
It had been, yes. And we predicted that it would, so. But it's abated since, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Great, but anyway, my congratulations. I just think it's just been so wonderful. And terrific job. Okay, anything else on the observation area? Thank you very much, Evan. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, item 10, authority board member requests and reports. Anybody got anything?
Me? No.
I would just like to thank this beautiful book that was left for us. It's fresh from the Historical Society, in honor of the centennial. I can't wait to open this up and dive into it, but thank you very much to the Airport Authority for giving each one of us a copy. Great. Item 11, public comment. Any public comment at all, Florence? Other business. Any other business to come before the board? Seeing none, the next meeting is scheduled for April 16th, 2025 at 5 p.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Meeting adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.